Welcome to Gather for Wellness Radio. I'm your host, Becky Litwicki, and it's Wellness Wednesday, which means we get to connect with another kindred spirit to expand our health and happiness and move one step closer to discovering our own magic formula for optimal wellness. Before I introduce my awesome guest for today's podcast, I want you all to head over to facebook.com/groups/Gather for Wellness. There, you'll find a comfy, cozy place to connect with others, be inspired, and discover your own magic wellness formula. Okay, now on to the show. My guest today is Amy Gowans. Amy is an integrative health coach with a master's in education. She enjoys spending time in a leadership role as a volunteer at her church. And today, she covers how to nourish your soul with primary foods and how to be a student of your own health. Here's a sneak peek.
But that was just more of a realization that we're all human, and no one has arrived yet, even though in my brain I assumed I was the one out of 1,700 that hadn't arrived. So it was really, gave me confidence as I moved forward in the program.
Amy, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm honored. This is a real treat for me. So thank you, Becky, for inviting me.
You're welcome. Amy and I had the privilege of working together at Lifebook for a few months, I think it was. And Amy was kind of at the start of a new journey, and I remember how excited she was to get into her IIN program and to learn more about just eating healthy foods and taking better care of herself. I know she was really looking forward to that. And now fast forward a couple of years, and she's come a long way. I've had a lot of fun watching her develop and learn and stuff through social media and things like that. So Amy, can you tell people a little bit about who you are and like the journey that you've been on, especially over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I would be happy to. So I am an empty nester now and have 2 adult children. And the time came when everybody was leaving the home that I realized I still had a long life to live. And I wasn't sure what I wanted that to look like, but what I did know was I was on the wrong path. So during that era, I was also working with a health coach who had gone through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And she had encouraged me for many years to explore that route. Of course, I was not open to that because I wasn't healthy, and I knew I would never, ever be able to fit in with those type of students. So there was a lot of pushback for many years. But when the time came that I wanted to start a new journey in my life, I kind of had to come to terms with, wait a minute, I think I need to be part of a different kind of community. And that was kind of the realization that I should start that program.
That's really interesting. I was actually just writing an article about like increasing your vibrational energy, and I think like being just by being courageous enough to put yourself in a new environment like that and to like be around the people who are living the way that you want to live is such a helpful way to use that as leverage.
It can be very scary, especially if you've, I'm a type A personality, and I'm going to do everything right sort of girl. Yet when the conviction comes that I was not doing things right, to admit it and put yourself out there in a place that you have no idea how that's going to pan out can be very, very scary. Really scary thing. But I did learn that was a year-long program, and what I did learn was we had 1,700 students just in my class, and I was in a really healthier spot than a lot of people I met. And not that that's good, but that was just more of a realization that we're all human.
Yes.
And no one has arrived yet, even though in my brain I assumed I was the one out of 1,700 that hadn't arrived. So it was really, gave me confidence as I moved forward in the program.
Yeah. How did you, what were some of your favorite ways to take advantage of that community experience to kind of leverage your own health?
Well, that program was about 8 to 10 hours of instruction per week for 11 months. So within that, I had to do a lot of video learning, probably with all the big names you've heard in the world of nutrition and healthy lifestyle. But in addition to that, there was a lot of outside homework assignments that you'd have to partner up with your peers. And, we were all on social media together, and we formed a Midwest Facebook group.
Sure.
So I had an opportunity to connect with people who were somewhat local within a 2-hour radius, but that was a lot of people. That was a good, 100 people.
Cool.
So through that, I had a lot of opportunities to have Skype calls and, FaceTime calls, meet people in person. We did health histories on everybody, on each other. And so sitting there and being vulnerable face to face, even if it was like Skype, and, being vulnerable with someone, a peer, with our challenges of what's affecting our health, that was really, really impactful for me.
Yeah.
To have someone listen to me, where I could be honest, and then to be able to do that in return was that's where I got most of my learning.
That's powerful. I think you're making such a strong point in that, like sometimes we don't realize what's actually happening until we decide and commit to digging into it. Like, we might just be like, oh, our health is poor, but then when you think about it, it's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, what does that feel like? What could I do to change it? And I think it sounds like you went through a pretty powerful experience of discovering that.
One of the things that I learned, and now this is my words of wisdom, I feel like I should have this tattooed on me. I heard this in a couple places, but primarily it was Dr. Daniel Amen, who talks about curing your brain, because our brain is what, helps us function. So he said, find the healthiest person you know and stick to them like glue. And it was like a light bulb, oh yeah. I have a lot of people in my life who are important to me, but they're not really healthy. Who can I have in my community that is super, super healthy that I can hang with? Yeah. And I, of course, wouldn't want to be burdensome on them, but I needed to really take those words of wisdom to heart.
Right.
And, this was months after I was in this program, months that I heard him say that in a lecture, and I thought, yep, that's the key.
That's awesome.
So I encourage that everyone out there, regardless if they think they're healthy or not, we all have areas in our community that are unhealthy, and to really take our time to evaluate. And I don't mean to get rid of all your friends or to abandon your family, but how your life is here, we're here for a limited amount of time, and of course we want to, meet our goals and leave a legacy, and we can't do that if we're unhealthy.
Right. So true. So who is your person?
So I actually have a few people. I think, as you know, I joined CrossFit, and it was a healthy community.
Yes.
It was a place I could go with no judgment, because when I joined, I was very overweight and very weak. No judgment at all. And, people talk to you, these high, super athletes high five you because you lifted up an empty bar, and it's and I'm I'm not worthy of a high five, yet I am worthy of a high five.
You showed up.
I showed up. I did the workout. I did it to the best of my abilities, and I get a high five for that, just like the person next to me who did muscle ups. And so even though, and it's been a year and a half now that I've been there, I might not know the person's name or their last name or what they do in their life. When I'm there, I'm part of the community. And that's just so crucial, because the only people who go to a thing like that are people who care about their health, their overall health.
Yep.
You know, they're willing to work hard so they can pay the membership, so they can show up, and they show up. So I think that was very impactful for me to be in a place of no judgment.
Yeah.
Huge.
That's cool. That's one of the things I love about CrossFit too. It's just there's constantly that never-ending support for each other, which I think is difficult to find in some gyms. So.
Yeah, you know, I had that challenge.
Yeah.
Every place you go, people just don't talk to you.
Yep.
They don't acknowledge you. And then if you're different from the norm, mm-hmm. which of course I was, you know, especially living in the city, you get a lot of young people who, you know, they might come from work or whatever. They already have relationships. They're not interested in having any sort of just visual connection
right.
with an empty nester woman. Like, and I get it. I mean, I don't take that offensively, but that's not who I am. I'm the type of person that wants to encourage the person next to me.
Right.
And it's, you know what, to encourage an athlete who's phenomenal and say how impressed I was with their abilities, that's good for them too. It's not just about
yes.
me getting the high five. It's
yep.
about giving the high five.
Yeah.
So that was, you know, really, really impactful in my life.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you. All right, let's talk about, I want to dive into, Amy has this concept. Did you learn about primary foods from IIN?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Amy kind of told me about this concept of having primary foods in your life, and I had not heard of that, I guess that way to describe it prior to talking with her. So Amy, can you kind of dive into what that is and the impact it's had on your life, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I was introduced to this maybe about 10 years ago when I met my health coach, who also was a graduate of IIN. Mm-hmm. And what it means is that in order to nourish ourselves, yes, we need food, you know, actual physical food and water. But prior to that, we need a healthy lifestyle, which would include physical activity, healthy relationships, some path of spirituality, and a healthy career or vocation. Mm-hmm. If we strive and are in continual learning mode to get those things in place, the secondary foods will naturally fall into place, and we'll crave the secondary foods that our body's asking for, versus processed foods and you know, high sugar content foods. We often crave those foods because we don't have the primary foods in place. And like I said, I heard about this quite a long time ago, but things took a long time in that department for it to click for me. Mm-hmm. And once I started IIN, and you know, they spent months on this in all different little aspects, but that all related back to primary foods, the light switch went on. Like, yeah, this is so important. Mm-hmm. And to be in a healthy community in all those areas, to be in a healthy community with your physical activity, like, it's scary to try stuff, but you've got to find a place where you fit. You know, to be in healthy relationships with other people who care about their wellness, to have a healthy community in the area of spirituality, and to have a career or a vocation, you know, a vocation that you feel like your passions are honored. Like, if you can get that in place, the secondary food is really secondary, isn't it?
Yeah. So what were some of your favorite ways to, like, you already talked about how you added CrossFit to your life, and you started like connecting with your IIN classmates and building that community for your relationships there. What were some other ways that you changed your life or changed your habits to kind of increase the nourishment you were getting from your primary foods?
So one of the things I did, well, first of all, the physical activity was huge. I tackled that before any dietary changes because I was very scared. And, you know, I'm not CrossFit is not scary, but you say it to people and they just shudder. It's like I had to get over the fear, and the fear really overrode me for many months, probably about 9 months that I was there. So I worked on that. And as far as relationships go, I was able to hone in on a couple healthy people in my life who cared about their future and cared about their lifestyle, that we decided to walk alongside each other. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important. I love all my friends and I love my family, but some people, that's not an area of importance to them. Mm-hmm. So making the decision to invest in just 2 or 3 people that really care was huge to me. And it helps me stay accountable because I'm helping them stay accountable and they're helping me stay accountable. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of like vocation and spirituality, I knew that my passion was to work along and serve alongside people who are marginalized. And so I've had that opportunity at my church in the city to get to do that. And I have to be healthy to do that. I can't feel sick because of my sugar highs and lows and my feelings of shame that come with that. So getting all those things in place has given me the opportunity to blossom. Now, I did learn one thing which was really interesting from a gentleman. He gave a lecture, and I don't remember his name, but he said, just do what you love. Pretend money's not a factor. What would you do if you could do anything? And he talked about how when he lived in Boulder, Colorado, he gave free yoga sessions in the park every Saturday because that's what he wanted to do. And after a couple of years, he had 100 so people showing up every Saturday. So people will come if the authenticity is there and the genuineness is there to do it. So I had made the decision that I love to read, and I knew I wanted to read the book from Gretchen Rubin, Better Than Before. Okay. And that's about how we use our innate abilities to change our habits.
Oh, I'm going to add that to my reading list.
It's incredible. I still have a lot of habits, right? A lot of things that I do that need to be changed. And so I thought, I learned by reading that book that I'm the type of person that needs outside accountability. Not everyone's that way, but that's how I'm designed. So I said, okay, you're going to host a brunch at your home, and you're going to invite as many people as you can invite, and you just see if anyone shows up. If one person agrees to show up, then it's worth it. So, that's what I did. I invited like 55 people, and I thought, let's see what happens. And what happened was I had 21 people show up. We had, a whole spread of healthy foods. People drove in from all over, and I read the book. So, like, not everyone who showed up read the book, but a lot of people did. And a lot of people, now I can have discussions with people in my circle around the same language that I had.
Yes.
And I'm all right with the people who didn't show up. Life happens, and it's good. Like, I'm like 1 or 2 people, so we can talk about how to change our habits and how to build new healthy habits. So that was something I did that I took a risk on, because I figured, why would anybody want to come to my place for brunch? Like, what kind of negative thinking is that?
You are so worth it, Amy. you are more than worth it.
It's like taking that risk, though, being vulnerable and saying, instead of asking people, what book would you like to read? I just made the choice, hey, I'm going to pick this book, and I'm going to invite people, and we're going to have healthy food, and we're going to have conversation. And then so people showed up, and no one really knew each other. These were all my different circles intersecting. And I thought, we'll just talk about the book between 15 to 20 minutes. Like, I don't want people to be uncomfortable. After an hour and 20 minutes, I had to end the conversation. And it was like, wow, like, yeah, you can do this. Do what you love, and people will show up. The right people will. The people that are supposed to show up, that it's in line with their thinking. And, right, don't we want healthy community around us, what we define as healthy? So, yeah, that was a really good experience for me.
I've got chills. I'm so inspired by you. I've been having some like ticklings to do something similar here, and you're gonna maybe help push me over the edge.
Yeah, because like if one or two people gather, it's like, okay, that was worth it. Like I had a lovely time at what I did. Now I have people around me where we all have common language, and so when we ask to be held accountable, like they know what they're talking about, and you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really it was something I needed to put myself out there and do, and I'm just really glad I took the risk.
Right. Your courage has definitely been showing through. What do you think is like when you say you were so scared to do CrossFit, what were you scared of? What was the fear?
I had a lot of fears. Was I going to get hurt?
Mm-hmm.
Was I going to be ignored? Was I going to feel like I didn't fit in to that kind of crowd?
Mm-hmm.
But what I did know about CrossFit was that every day the workout was different, and I love variety. I can't stand doing the same thing when it comes to working out. And so it was like, okay, I knew those things weren't in place. I really did not know how the community responds to each other. Mm-hmm. I knew it was community-based, but I didn't really know what that looked like. And so I'm a huge advocate for people. For people who are in their 70s, who can barely get up, they can go to CrossFit.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps the strong athletes coming back, because they're like, yeah, we can all do this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had a lot of fears, and also the fear of like, well, you're in the overweight group, or you go to other gyms and they have weight loss groups, and those are all great, except for it's very shaming for the person who's in it, especially if they've done it for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
You get tired of being in that group.
Right.
So the fact that it was never labeled.
Yeah. I think that's perfect, because then you, like, by facing, like, those are fears that we have in all areas of life. It's like, right? Like, well, what if I'm not accepted at my new job? Or what if I'm, like, for various reasons, but by you, like, having the courage to just try CrossFit and to keep showing up, like, I'm guessing that you then had more courage to show up to other things that had those similar fears.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that is the overriding benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never say I'm a fearful person. That is not how I categorize myself.
Yeah.
I can do anything. I'm not fearful. But, there are always trigger points for each and every one of us where fear comes up. And I can definitely say by doing that and showing up and encouraging the new people who are fearful to keep coming back, like I'm using the words that I need to hear myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, you can push through this. This is a great opportunity. You're doing phenomenal. Because those are the words I need to keep saying to myself. You can do this.
Yep.
You can show up, Amy. You don't have to be afraid of doing that. Everything can be modified. So it's like, even in life, everything can be modified to line up with what fears you might have. Mm-hmm. And it just helps us move forward and take the next step.
Mm-hmm. And I love that positive dialogue you have, because like you said in the beginning, that you didn't feel worthy of a high five for lifting a bar when somebody's doing a muscle up next to you. And I think there's so many times it's like, well, we're like, it's either that or you don't start, like you don't try, and I think we're always like, I think just in general society, we have such a tendency to be hard on ourselves before we ever, support ourselves or congratulate ourselves or anything. So I think like you learning that is worthy of praise and that is something to be excited for is awesome.
And I think, though, Becky, it all goes back to the community, though, because we learned those things from experiences. Like we learned those things from being excluded or by people not talking to us or whatever,
Yeah.
over the years, you learn that.
Yeah.
So like when you find an intentional, healthy community, the standards are already set that you belong. So you don't have to push through and try to fit in. You're already in.
Yeah.
When you walk in the door. And so that's why in the primary foods, like physical activity, your career and vocation, your relationships, your spirituality, to be in a community that honors everybody, no matter how they look, it's just crucial. And if you can get those things in place, the secondary foods are a lot easier to tweak.
Yeah. And you want to then, like, you want to show up for yourself. Like, you want to eat the greens and the raw nuts and seeds and stuff like that, because you want to be able to enjoy those primary foods. Like, it doesn't have to be then something forced.
Absolutely. And I feel like my adult life, it was opposite. Like, well, if I can get my secondary foods right, everything in life will be perfect.
Yeah.
I'll be thin. Everybody. And it's just such opposite of what society teaches us. Like, the primary foods are really, really primary. And they'll never be perfect. So we're always on a journey of working on those things. But committing to those first will certainly be an easier wellness journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love to, you had mentioned to me talking about being like a student of your own health. And I think that's such a powerful just like mindset to have. So can you share a little bit about what that means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I had worked with a health coach, and even during that time when it appeared I had not been making changes, I can reflect back now and say, oh my, you did a lot for your journey during that time, because I was introduced to different wellness lifestyles and authors, and I did read books, and I did watch YouTube videos, and I did things that someone who was stuck couldn't do. So I did, work on my learning. But once I did get into the Institute of Integrative Nutrition and realized, if I'm going to keep up with this is like a minimum of 8 hours a week of learning. I needed that structure.
Yeah.
That's who I was at the time. I needed to push through, and I did. I did everything from beginning to end. And now when I work with people who want a lifestyle change, my first question is, are you willing to be a learner in this process? Because it's not just a prescription, eat this, this, and this. And so that can look so different for everyone. It could be as simple as, watching the different documentaries on food, and being willing to read books that are out there, being willing to read different articles. It's the willingness that's the key. And then if you're committed to that, but that's also still part of the primary food. I think, I'm not sure where that would fall in, but being a lifelong learner is crucial, because science is always changing.
Yep.
And we have to be willing to be open and listen to things, and then decide what's right for our own bodies.
I couldn't agree more. After years of like learning about the body, and like I understood that real food was important and things like that, I still had like these nagging things. And so I did at the end of last year, I did an elimination diet. And for me, that has been one of like the biggest learning experiences in like my own health, like trying to figure out how my body actually feels when I eat certain things, and how it reacts. And I think I love the point that you bring up, that there's not a prescription for everything. And I think, like, for Gather for Wellness, I always say, like, we all have a somewhat like magical formula for wellness, like, and what works for me may not work for you. And I love the fact that you are yourself, and also encouraging others to to experiment and to figure out what that means to them, because there is no one size fits all. And as soon as people can get over that idea, I think they've already made a huge step towards, being successful.
Yeah, and the willingness to make mistakes along the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and try the journey and understand that just because you, for example, you did the elimination diet and you think you know the answer today,
yep.
maybe trying that again in 6 months or a year to see, wait a minute, maybe something's changed it.
Yep.
Or yep, I'm still spot on, like, or sharing it with someone in your community that also wants to do it, like always being open to that opportunity to learn more.
Yep. And never thinking that it's set. I totally agree with that point. Like, what worked for my body then may not even at this point work. Like, it constantly changes, and our mindset about just our mindset period influences how foods affect us and things like that. So there's so much that goes into play that we have to constantly be experimenting and exploring what is optimal for us. Let's do some fun questions that I always like to wrap up with. If you could have more of something, but time or money were not an option, what would you want more of?
I would really like more time with my immediate family, like my kids and my husband. The years go by really, really quick. Yeah. And, all the years I wanted to rush by when they were little, I don't want it. No more.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. What is your favorite, if you had 5 minutes to create better wellness, what would you do?
I would commit to investing in other people who care to move forward on this journey, and really make an intention that I'm going to spend time with the people who want to be in communities that are seeking wellness.
Awesome. And what's your favorite health habit?
So I think probably based on what I've already said, as much as I still do not like to exercise, I would say probably CrossFit. It gives me that mental challenge.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the physical challenge, it gives me the mental challenge to accept who I am and not shame myself for that, and to push myself forward, even if it's tiny baby steps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Amy, thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. I think I'm so excited for all that you've learned and all that you'll inspire other people to do. And thank you.
Thank you. It was a real joy. I just absolutely love dissecting where I came from and where I'm going. So thank you, Becky.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of Gather for Wellness Radio. Please head over to facebook.com/groups/Gather for Wellness to join our heart-centered group focused on feeling great so we can live life to the fullest. I would also really appreciate if you'd leave a review over on iTunes, Stitcher, or the blog. And please don't forget to share this episode with your friends and family, and also on social media. We hope you'll join us for the next episode, but until then, keep being awesome! The information provided on this podcast and on gatherforwellness.com is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended to be taken as medical advice. Becky encourages you to make your own healthcare decisions based upon your research and in partnership with a qualified healthcare professional. The entire contents of this website and podcast are based upon the opinions of Becky Litwicki and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information provided is for entertainment purposes only.